You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. The County Council has passed the budget as of June 3rd with over $20 million in surplus spending. And the Salisbury City Council just had their latest meeting, and they do seem like they are destined for several lawsuits, both from developers and private citizens. In order to talk about all this, I brought in Mike Goldberg from Del Mar, Dr. Joe Venosa from Salisbury. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So I think if we can bring in Holly Worthington later on in the show, I think she'll be able to kind of tie it up from someone who understands the development side, but also as a private citizen in Salisbury and a business owner in Salisbury.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot to talk about right now, gentlemen. And we're not going to be able to get all to it to this episode, but I do think we should at least address it. Yeah. Some of these topics are going to take some more research and a little bit more time on another show. Mike, I'll start with you. The budget was passed, and there is, for the county, there is $20.5 million in surplus spending. We just covered just a few months ago that we finally got the financial audit from 24. There was $11.5 million in additional surplus. How do you feel about $20.5 million being spent?
It's just chump change. If they run out of money, at least they'll just find some way to extract it from the taxpayers.
Well, we know what way that will be.
And we haven't even gotten to Salisbury yet.
Yeah, no. I mean, County Executive Julie Giordano stated just a few months ago that she felt like she was going to have to break the revenue cap for education, and then stated later it was a bait and switch thing. She was just messing around with the county council.
Don't you just love to hear that from the highest elected official, that she was pulling a bait and switch and that she actually wants to find a way to increase our taxes? Yeah. That's a conservative if I ever saw one.
Yeah, not really. Well, another conservative move, and some with some very articulate arguments, is the tipping fees at the landfill. We are going to see another 22% increase as of January 1st of 26, which is in this fiscal year budget. We're going to go from $78 to $88.
I think part of the challenge is that there's a lot of ongoing questions, especially if you talk to people that have worked up in that landfill years prior and in prior county administrations. There are some big questions about just what is actually going on regarding the cell construction and regarding the actual amount of trash coming in. And I think part of the fact is when you don't have any oversight over what's going on up there, when you have the public works director who came in, was there for a month.
Mustafa Kulkarson.
Correct.
The guy with the degree.
Right.
The doctorate to do this, right?
And the only registered professional engineer.
Yeah, I mean, to bring in the person in a position that had a 4-year vacancy, and then he was only there about a month and very quickly left. Yeah. And, of course, there's no transparency as to what he actually may have uncovered, although the community certainly has its suspicions if you talk to the right people.
Well, one of the biggest areas that we're going to spend some of the surplus money, and surplus money meaning money that we didn't spend in fiscal year 25 that we're going to spend in 26, is Sharps Point. A total of $10 million. The Public Works came before the county council and asked in mid-April for $2.3 million, and he needed an answer by that day. And this was so we could just do the dredging in Wicomico River this winter, and we had to remove 100,000 cubic yards of material out of Sharps Point through the Camden neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about another 300,000 at an additional cost of $7.5 million. Mm. One of the areas I dislike the most is, and Director Pam Olin spoke to this, is they're shifting what's going to be bonded versus what is coming out of surplus, basically because they need that money now.
Right.
Well, we've gone from we haven't done this for 7 years to we need $10 million before November.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty scary.
Well, it's scary, but it raises even scarier questions, right?
Yeah.
And particularly if you live along Camden and Riverside, in those neighborhoods, that part of the county, you're going to see something even scarier than just your money being spent without full answers, which is, of course,
60 trucks per day going
what is it?
Down your
road? How many?
60,000 trucks.
60,000
trucks were needed to get the first 100,000. 30,000 in, 30,000 out.
Right.
So times that by 4.
So you're looking at 240,000 truck trips going up and down.
On Riverside Drive?
On Riverside. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie Pet Sematary, but it's never a good thing to have high-speed trucks with sludge going through residential neighborhoods, particularly when you're not informing the public. I think that's the other thing that's going to be...
And this is going to start in June.
Yeah,
so, I mean, it's coming soon. But definitely some of these questions should have been being raised at least in the last couple of years.
Well, and the other thing, too, is but you saw this in the last county council meeting when, from the perspective of the haulers, they said, listen, we've never been specifically told or brought into a conversation about tipping fee
You're talking
increases.
about tipping fees, yeah.
Tipping fees. And much like the issue that people in Sharps Point are going to unfortunately find out about, it's not as if they were consulted prior either. No. Now, I realize that if you're going to do the project, and we're not necessarily saying that the project isn't valid, but we could debate the money and the timing of it. But the fact is, I haven't talked to anybody in that community, and I live in that district.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to anybody who seems to be aware of what's coming down the road, literally.
Well, so an area that could have been chaotic that wasn't is Fruitland Primary. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a 2-year funding model. So at one point, the state was saying, hey, look, the county's going to have to forward fund Fruitland Primary. We at least have enough money coming from the state to fund the first year's construction. Total of $56 million. The state is supposed to chip in, I think, about 28 or 27.5 million of it. We're going to be able to get started, but this is something that could creep up in less than a year's time. 11 months from now, this could be a serious chaotic event, right?
Well, a lot of the cost of building that school remains unfunded. We don't know where the money's going to come from. This is poor financial planning, and from someone who comes from a background of banking and financial planning, it just blows my mind how they go about these things.
Well, so more topics of future shows. The library funding for the Shoemaker Pond Library. We were told last September the Library Commission needed a little over $300,000 to get plans done. They were at the top of the list to get a grant from the state to fund most of the renovations. As of June of 2025, it's still not been signed.
Move the public library, flagship library on Shoemaker Pond from FY26 pay-go to general obligation bond in the amount of $866,000.
Motion's there, second? Second. We have a second, James. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Amendment passes.
And there's not been a lot of discussion. I mean, Vice President Jeff Merritt did ask the question back in May, was told that an update was coming soon, but we are literally 9 months out from having committed this money. We don't know where that's going to come from. And much to Mike's point about Fruitland Primary, the county now is the leaseholder of that building.
Yeah.
And we're committed to giving up the downtown library building to SU. What are we going to do? What are we going to do 6 months from now if we find out this grant didn't go through? Are we just going to sit on a moldy building?
Well, again, I think I have a suspicion that the grant will go through, but the fact that it hasn't yet, and the fact that there hasn't been any updates since it was basically framed as we pretty much got it. It's on the desk. Must be a big desk because it hasn't really come down yet. But
is this supposed to come from the desk of the $3 billion in debt state? I mean, we're counting on $7 million to come from a state that's $3 billion behind, going to be $6 billion next year.
Yeah, at least the federal government can print more money, but the state doesn't have the authority to do that.
Well, again, I think what concerns some of us is the fact that it was framed as such a certainty, and it would be here now.
One thing that they have slowed down is the Verizon building renovations. They've said, look, we're not going to fund that until we get plans. Mike, you've talked about what's the appropriate amount. When that stuff starts to come out, I think we need to, again, do another show on that as well.
And make a motion to amend the capital budget as follows. Remove the Health Department Verizon building renovations from the general obligation bond amount. That's a reduction of $2,750,000.
Now, we are still spending money on Barron Creek Road. It was $850,000 set aside. We've already spent about half of that. And we have video and footage of pictures of the county down there spending money through their private contractor, KSI. KCI, I'm sorry. And we're spending money on something that we don't have any updates from the State Highway Administration whether or not they're going to fund it. which has been told to us in the past it's not likely.
As you can see in the budget, we've got a lot of expensive projects on deck and a few that are, and we need to think about prioritizing these projects on the cost versus the impact on the citizens. Do we have a plan? Do we have a timeline? Is there a cost projection? Who's responsible for the funding? Whether the road gets fixed or doesn't get fixed, the fact remains, we have nothing. We don't know what the plan is. We don't know what the timeline is. We don't know how much it's going to cost, and we don't know who's going to pay for it.
The council is not suggesting that we do want Barron Creek to be put back together. We don't want Barron Creek. I mean, none of the council members, I think, have really come to that conclusion as of just yet. The question is how, and how much is the county going to spend? How much do you think that the state's going to spend? Has MDE come down here yet to evaluate the road? I witnessed the dam in Fruitland on their Division Street. I sat in a meeting when they came down and said it was going to be $600,000. And I know we ended up spending at least $3 million. And it was at least a year or two that road was completely closed.
Salisbury City Council, Joe. I know you couldn't attend the meeting, but you were on live PAC 14,
Oh, yeah,
right?
I watched it, yeah.
So
That was fun.
let's take a break. When we come back, can we talk about the Salisbury City Council?
We definitely should.
All right. So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to dive into Dr. Joe Venosa's brain and what he witnessed at the Salisbury City Council this past Monday. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. So as we're diving into the Salisbury City Council meeting just this last Monday, Dr. Joe Venosa still in the studio, Mr. Mike Goldberg. Joe, you were able to watch it on PAC 14 live, right?
I wish I'd been there in person. I couldn't make it, but it was entertaining and shocking nevertheless.
So, you know, they were talking about specifically hiring a public information officer, but for the council, right?
Well, there were two things at work. So, once again, at a very last minute point, the City Council President, Dashun Dowdy, put on the agenda, which is not available to the public, by the way. This is one quick thing that we need to understand. This is big criticism, is that the briefing book for the city is often not available until the very last moment or not at all. So that's been brought up before at meetings. But nevertheless, the issue that was put on by the City Council President was for two positions. One was to basically hire a new deputy city administrator.
Okay.
Because there's a vacancy.
Okay.
And with Andy Kitzer leaving,
They need to have that.
They need help, yeah. And the second was this new position that was to be created in the clerk's office, which would basically, as the council president and some of his allies framed it, it would be a sort of a media coordination specialist, or more appropriately, I guess, a social media czar.
That would answer directly to the county or the city council?
It would seem to be that way. As it was framed initially and brought up, it would be essentially someone whose full-time job would be to do social media and community engagement. The nature of that would be a position that would kind of work alongside Julie English, the city clerk. Now, this was something that was brought out, and it was questioned, particularly by council members DeShiel and April Jackson.
I'd like to have a discussion about the media specialist position.
Absolutely.
It has not been discussed in council work session. There's no job description. I'm not sure that it's been processed through HR, and I think that's part of the vetting process that we do. And I think there would be a much better use for that salary somewhere else in the city.
Councilman DeShield, and we did discuss this during budget, and it was
a different title. It now has come up as a different title. Same probably position, different title.
Yes.
So to me, that's a way of getting a job in there without including the total council in discussion of this before it's presented. So.
Apologies if you feel that way. This was.
I have a question, and I have a problem with it. We're struggling for money now for the budget. We really are. And I don't want to put anything else on our citizens. We do not need this position. We've never had one. So why now do we need one? We're doing no more than we were doing before. And I don't need anyone to do my media. I can do my own. And I think every last one of us can do that. $85,000 more dollars, but we're crying about finishing a budget that we're a negative in.
If you look on our social medias, there's been no mention of city council doing the work in the community unless it's with anything else. There's also explained legislation that's going on.
Councilwoman DeShield basically asks the city council president, we've never really talked about this before in public. It was never mentioned in budget
Wasn't at work session.
Wasn't really mentioned. Why is it being brought now at such a late stage? And then the city council president essentially said, well, we had mentioned it before, but it was under the auspices of a different title. That didn't go over too well with Councilmember Jackson, who tends to call it like it is, whether you agree or not with everything she, stands for or votes on. She is very direct.
Yeah.
And she's like, basically, excuse me, why are we creating a position which would cost about $85,000 per year with fringe benefits to basically have a social media person convey information that the city already does through the mayor's office and through individual members. And she brought up a point that she is in regular contact with her constituents, whether it's for fundraisers or events, through various social media platforms. So why do we have to create this new position?
Did you get the sense, especially from Michelle Gregory, that there's just a lack of connection with the constituents? I mean, she asked the question of, is it possible that we hold town hall meetings? I mean, is that someone who really understands the people that she's representing?
This is somebody who could set up town halls in each of our districts and make arrangements for that so that we can answer constituents face to face. Could we do that ourselves? Possibly, but at least three of us, but I cannot keep up on social media all the time, and I don't have time for that. Things like that. I personally like doing it myself, that sort of thing. That's why I haven't put any requests in, because I like being able to do that myself. Because
Council President DeShawn Doughty, they have social media pages where they routinely custom make videos and music clips. So they clearly have the time to engage on social media, but they claim in the meeting, we don't have the time to inform our constituents about what's always going on. And if you watch the public comments, there's some really good citizen input. And Mr. Michael Langford, no stranger to the show, put it very well.
Just common sense-wise, real quick soundbite for y'all. Part-time council does not need a full-time PR person. That's crazy work. I appreciate the members on the council who spoke to common sense. Specifically to Councilwoman Blake, your example of why, before the budget's approved, why would you put out an official press release for something that isn't official? I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. So your example is just falling flat. You couldn't, and maybe have a better example with more time. But what you're presenting to the public here doesn't make any sense. Please don't do that. I'm glad that you guys went with common sense at the end of the day and nixed that second part, that last minute amendment. It wasn't even written for us to review. The council hadn't reviewed that position. I just think that, maybe I don't know what you all need, right? But this is not the way to go about doing it. Last minute trying to shove something into the budget. It's just be actually transparent and have a conversation. But, right, you have a way to hear your constituents. There's plenty of people that aren't getting email responses from y'all.
As the meeting went on, what people on the council, and specifically the split was, basically you have the mayor's administration, council members Jackson and DeShield, and then on the other side you had Council President Doughty, Vice President Blake, and Council Member Michelle Gregory, who basically, I think, began to tip their hand and then said, well, we're not being allowed to convey information from the mayor's office or in a way that would give our view. And then what you really began to see is that there seems to be more concern that they can't drive a political narrative at the same degree that they would
the same group that's not putting a briefing book out to the public for the agenda.
This is the irony.
Is true.
Council Member Gregory, Councilwoman Blake in particular, have been on the council for more than 6 years now. So they're not new to the job, and they have every ability to engage constituents. They have every ability to have town halls in their districts. And more importantly, they also can do something which often is a challenge for some of them, which is to just answer citizen emails. Anyone who watches this, who has ever written an email correspondence to the city council, will tell you that more often than not, they never even get a response. And keep in mind, the city council literally purged their email distribution list.
Yeah.
I think 2 months ago.
No, about 3 months ago.
3 months ago, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that was something that the council president was also called out for, was, you say that you want to engage the citizens in this new highly paid position when you don't even actually keep citizens who are informed and are following on the email list. It just seems like really hypocritical and kind of a way to subvert, I guess, communication from what they see as a hostile mayor. That would be my view of it.
Isn't it interesting that the answer or the solution always seems to be to grow government? We'll add another position here. Well, it's just one position. And then a few months later or next year, well, we're going to add somebody else. It doesn't improve government, but throwing money, at government, and increasing the staff seems to appeal to those who are already in power because it actually broadens the authority that they have over others.
Keep in mind, and I want to be very clear here, there are council members who, on their public social media pages, have blocked citizen comments. So we can go into the whole constitutionality of that and the legal ramifications, but I think it is a great and sad irony when you have a situation where there is a need to create a whole new position, administrative position, that doesn't actually have any discernible benefit except pad the authority of certain local officials. When April Jackson brought up the fact that in that very meeting, they're talking about raising water and sewer rates 6%, right? The actual meeting where you're raising the price on people.
Something so essential.
On something so essential, you're then saying, let's also create an $85,000 position. It really was a bad look, and what's very telling about the meeting, if you watch these moments, is that very quickly, the council president really kind of tucked his tail and sort of then
He ended up voting against it.
Ended up voting against it. It's very interesting that the only person who actually sort of died on the hill was Councilmember Gregory. Even Councilwoman Angela Blake abstained.
Okay. So it did fail 3-1 with one absence.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And for now, it seemed to be put to bed.
Well, but talking about calling out, I mean, another citizen got up and actually called Council President Deshaun Dowdy out for some of his own personal financial choices, which have come into question because we've seen some of the spending on logoed shirts and that sort of thing. It's really a very ethical type of question. Like, do the constituents owe it to their elected officials to buy them swag?
I have questions about your budget from 2023 to early of 2025. What you turned in, is that what you're wearing tonight? A J. Crew jacket that you turned in for us city taxpayers to pay for? I looked for a line item of the $2,000 for 2025. Couldn't find any line items where you're allowed to turn things in. You have Nike Pro jacket and hoodie. You turned in polo shirts. You turned in embroidery. Mileage is kind of questionable too. Then I took it upon myself to check your record. That's pretty sad. Pretty sad on the judiciary, where you are in charge partially of a budget overseeing the city of Salisbury, and you can't even pay your bills. I highly recommend all of you go back and watch the budget session.
There are questions about, how much money is City Council President Deshaun Dowdy spending on clothing?
Or attending candidate fundraisers before they're elected.
Correct. Okay. Correct. And how does that look, especially given that we're dealing with the city that is seemingly always in a perpetually difficult fiscal situation, and we're raising rates?
6%? Are you kidding me? On the water and sewer? I've lived through from 2015 when Jake Day went on his tour of raising rates for lawsuits. I don't care what chemical you need, whatever. It's ridiculous. Charges for services increased by 31% for every dollar you spend on water and sewer bills since 2015. You get the same service, but now you're spending $1.31. That is 15% higher than the Biden inflation rate that did not go away as you were told it would.
This budget tonight, first of all, the thing that was shot down and a couple of the other matters, they weren't even in the briefing book. The only thing in the briefing book was increasing expenditures by about $933,000. The only things, Mr. Dowdy, that have been snuck into the budget without much public notice have been things like this, these items. They wasn't in the briefing book. Why was that? There's no excuse for it. Media specialist or whatever. It's basically to promote political agenda for certain members of the council. I mean, $85,000 to have somebody set up a Facebook page?
Have this happening in this very same meeting where you're talking about the rates that will be raised on basic things. And keep in mind, and the mayor said this and the people have said this, the majority of what these rate increases are for is tied to our debt service. Why is the city in debt? Well, as our incoming guest, Ms. Holly Worthington, will talk about, part of it has to do with the previous mayoral administration and the decisions there that you could argue were not exactly fiscally wise.
Well, and I think, so great, I want to bring her in, and one perspective she can give us is, one, where did some of the root cause start with the issues with parking and density downtown, but also, more importantly, what is the current city council and the current mayor's priority is, at least to mitigate those issues and maybe even rectify them.
Yep.
So, well, when we come back, Dr. Jovanosa will stick around, and we're going to bring in Holly Worthington from the city of Salisbury and talk about lawsuits and development in Salisbury. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. So we have been covering the density and parking issues in downtown business district Salisbury. In order to talk more about this subject, I brought in Holly Worthington from Salisbury. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Jovanosa, thanks for sticking around.
Always.
So, Holly, tell me a little bit about yourself and, what is it you do?
I own a real estate brokerage in downtown Salisbury. The building that I own is called the Synagogue.
Okay. And how long have you owned that building?
Since the end of 2020.
Okay. And the last several years, you've been pretty outspoken against not just density in particular, but just the process that they've used to increase density. Is that accurate?
I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure. Joe, you've been going to the city council meetings longer than that. I mean, this has been a subject that's been coming up for that long?
It has. I would say I've been attending and getting involved more or less since Holly has, because I think that's when a lot of these issues have kind of coalesced.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, Holly, tell me a little bit about the density issue from your perspective, particularly with parking and any other issues that have come up.
Well, my initial interaction and coming in and being involved in this was just based on my own personal issue of them potentially developing a lot that my building utilizes. But in looking through and participating in the meetings, I'm starting to realize there was a lot more issues that were involved, a lot of things that went on behind the scene that were not on the up and up. And I think that my participation now is to hopefully right the wrongs that have been going on for many years.
So you're referencing specifically like closed door meetings, maybe deals that were changed without proper contracts. But I want to hear more about that. I mean, we've talked before about there's been reissue of contracts with different LLCs. Can you go into some detail about specifics there?
Initially, this development project was going to be done by a company called Devrico.
Okay.
Right? And moving forward, I think that was maybe 2017 or something. Okay. That contract expired a year later. Okay. Fast forward to 2023. There is a meeting that's held, and it's in regards to the sale of lots 1, 11, and 15. During that meeting, it went into a closed session, which was deemed illegal. There was discussions during that meeting where lots 1 and 11 were already in contract with this LLC since 2017. So basically, they needed to throw lot 15 in so they didn't have to downscale their project. So I think council members did not fully understand this was a whole new entity. And to be honest with you, it was a whole new entity that was created in 2023. However, the procurement officer during this meeting stated that they had been negotiating the sale or adding in Lot 15 since 2021 with Salisbury Town Center Apartments LLC. However, that LLC wasn't even in effect since 2021, and that contract was void several years earlier.
So just to break it down for the average viewer like me, you basically have the city council in an illegal meeting with the procurement officer, Jennifer Miller, basically giving this lot to Mr. Gillis, Mr. Gilkerson, who
Salisbury Town Center
Salisbury
Apartments.
Town Center Apartments.
Yeah.
Under the auspices of a different LLC that didn't actually legally exist yet.
No, it was the contract was not just being updated at that point. That contract needed to be redone.
Right.
In addition, when I requested information from the city, I received information back that they never re-advertised that the sale of that lot or lots after that contract was voided, which legally, based on law, they were supposed to have re-advertised that in print.
Now, is the city council aware of that discrepancy themselves?
I believe it's part of the current suit, so I believe they have copies of that.
Okay.
Well, what do you think the city council's priorities are now, and do they align with the current mayor Randy Taylor's priorities for downtown development?
No, I think they are pro-development, which is fine. We all are pro-development,
Sure.
but I think they're pro moving this all forward without actually doing their due diligence. They just want it to be done and move forward. And then I think Randy is actually trying to properly do his due diligence so that when a decision is made and the projects are started moving forward, it's not going to have a negative impact. So I think what he's doing is just protecting our city. I don't think they are.
And that's, to me, what's so shocking is that you not only have the projects that I think a lot of us would argue are not beneficial to most people in the city and certainly not to our finances, but based on this, they're also illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, we've had Randy Taylor on the show as well, and one of his concerns that he's stated to us on our show is the bonding of, say, the parking garage. Because at the end of the day, if the city of Salisbury bonds the parking garage, they're financially responsible. They're on the hook. I mean, it's like co-signing a
Well, the other
loan
thing is
with someone.
that the city's not going to generate enough revenue to have that get paying for itself,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And the other part is it was a sole bid, and that bid was done several years ago. That quote of 10 million isn't essentially what the cost is going to be now. So, you know, it's going to be something that I think that the garage is being done, you know, obviously to suit this project, but it's also being done and it's not going to suit our downtown.
So I want to get your take too. If we go back to November of 24, the Planning and Zoning Commission had a very long hearing, five almost 6 hour
there.
long hearing. Yeah,
Yeah.
'Cause we had to bring a lunch and a dinner to that one. But it seemed very staged and rushed, at least to me.
Oh,
It passed
I think
6
it
to
seemed
1.
to everybody.
Yeah. Do you think the decision there was already made before we even
Yes.
had the meeting?
And I'm going to tell you, it was funny because when we all got done our public comments, usually they'll have people on that board will give input, you know, and they went right into that vote. And there was a piece of paper that was being read off of.
Yeah. It was a script. It was literally
After that vote, basically with them moving it forward. It was already written. So to me, that seemed...
I remember Joe Holloway, councilman, did ask for more time to talk about it, but there was none. I mean, they
There was
went
no
right
discussion.
into it. Yeah.
Yep.
It's kind of remarkable that in that meeting where for nearly 4 hours, and a good majority of people spoke out against this change. I mean, with the exception of the developers who were literally there, that you would have Chip DeShiel kind of read a pre-written script with no response to the public, no reflection. As you said, it was
Yeah, it was like we didn't matter.
Yeah.
And this was for a text amendment change. This is, I mean, this isn't for a variance. This logistically changes all development in the central business district. And well, go ahead, Joe.
Well, just one thing, and all of that included, I think the thing that also disturbs a lot of us, or at least certainly people like me, is that when you look at who was on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I mean, I have a real problem with the fact that at least 4 of those people have personal business connections to some of those developers. And the fact that they don't recuse themselves or don't even admit it is really, I think, problematic.
When you're looking at where is the root cause of these legal issues? Because we're talking more. If you're kind of looking back in history, the last 5 or 7, 10 years, where do you think the issues arose from?
Well, I think the sale of these lots, I think, kind of slid by the radar of the public. I didn't know a lot of this stuff was going on until initially I got an invite to a historic meeting. I was owning a business downtown. There wasn't a lot of conversation I was hearing about all of this. I feel like it was a lot of closed door meetings. The sale of the lots, the pricing that they did not benefit the city. There's lots. Look at Marina Landing, I think in 88 sold for like 1.45 million, and now it just sold for $1.
$1, yeah.
And then we're leasing our marina back for 50 years at $1.
And with a renewal.
Yeah, two renewals.
Yeah.
So they can actually renew that 2 more times. Yeah. So
it does seem like you're busy running a business. Mm-hmm. You're busy doing all the other things that people do in their daily lives, make payroll and sell and all that kind of stuff. And if you're not closely paying attention, and even if you are, these other deals happen. But the surplus sale started with former Mayor Jake Day's administration back in 2015-16. That's accurate, right?
He was elected in 2015, I believe.
Right?
Yeah. So, yeah, he can.
So one thing I found strange, that Lot 15 was originally not part of the comprehensive plan. It was slated to be parking. The fact it was surplus and is full on a daily thing, plus the city put out this big advertisement or big write-up about how they had put the charging stations there after they surplus the lot, which to me is strange that you're going to surplus a lot and then you're going to go add in charging stations and then you're going to take a big notoriety about the fact you added in these charging stations, but what you're not putting there is you're actually going to remove those because there's going to be development.
But this is really the crux of it, is that how former Mayor Jake Day, essentially from my perspective, gives away city assets to his childhood friends and in some cases his campaign contributors, and nobody thinks to even question, is that in the interest of the city, and certainly is it going to bring in the city money? I mean, put aside the ethical implications, just terrible business.
Well, look at the Brew River issue right now. Brew River was given exclusive rights to their parking lot, right? And
Justin Shaw brought this up at the meeting.
Yeah, and then they gave it to Marina Landing. Now Marina Landing's suing for $40 million, but they bought the property for $1.
Yeah.
You're going to put us at that kind of liability to,
And again, that's a Jake Day decision, correct?
It was, as far as the timing,
Yeah.
How do you think we can resolve this issue? I mean, obviously, some of this is going to go through courts. I mean, there's a lawsuit now, and even some of your contention is that they're calculating the density wrong.
Correct.
How do we get to a point that what's best for the citizens of Salisbury and even to some degree Wicomico County are served?
I think that they need to look at all the studies and they need to see the impacts. They need to I think removing a community impact statement was terrible, especially you're adding in a new development in a historic downtown, and it's already been the Zoning Board of Appeals already said one of the reasons for denial was the negative impact it was going to have on the existing downtown. But then here we go, fast forward down the road, now all of a sudden it's allotted because we changed the zoning, but it doesn't take away the negative impact. It's still there.
And I think that's hard for the common citizen, who doesn't want to get into politics or government affairs.
Or zoning.
I don't want to get into this.
So the Board of Appeals is separate from planning and zoning. They can allow a variance, but they can't just pass the text amendment. That has to go to planning and zoning. And our Board of Appeals turned this down, and then it went to circuit court twice for appeal, and that was turned down. Mm-hmm. When all of those options failed, and only because the ability of these developers with deep pockets and lawyers, were they able to come back and do a text amendment change? Would that be accurate?
I would say
Yeah, I mean, the deep pockets help, but what's interesting is that the city council, at least the majority, I don't necessarily think that the financial influence of the developers necessarily matters as much as, like, there's this odd ideology that basically, as I see as a citizen, is like, if we give the developers everything, literally everything, somehow down the road we'll have more revenue, more housing, and it'll enrich the city. Like, and again, I have to say this. I'm being a bit hyperbolic, but I would almost respect some of these city council people if they were like being financially influenced.
Oh, wow.
Because at least there would be self-interest. But I can't, for the life of me, understand why you would have people who would just give away our city assets, overlook the environmental, the historical impacts.
Well, and there's one other aspect too, and I've gone around the county the last year or so filming a lot.
Yeah.
There's other developments inside the city and the county
that are doing just fine.
That didn't need a giveaway.
Builders will build, to quote one of my friends who used to be a county executive here, and he made the point that, if you look at Fruitland, if you look at other parts of the city, if you look at other entities in the municipalities.
Even over on the west side.
Absolutely. I mean, look at what's going on by Nanticoke Road and Pemberton.
But the problem with that is if they build in those areas, they're not getting the same kind of grants or, tax breaks or stuff like that. Yeah.
What Jake Day brings the big checks.
They're not getting that, money that helps towards the development.
And yet the development still happens, right? That's the irony. And it seems like when you have these personal political connections to certain entities, whether it's the former mayor or now state authorities, it really tilts the table as far as who has influence on the direction of the community.
So, okay, let's talk about influence. How does the common citizen who has to go to work, has to go to pick up kids at daycare, sports and all that kind of stuff, how do they help hold the elected officials accountable when we're still more than 2 years away from an election?
The truth?
Yeah, the truth.
We go to the meetings, we say the things, we're not heard. So I don't even know what the resolution, other than where I'm filing a lawsuit.
Okay.
Like I don't see a resolution.
As a last resort. This was not, you didn't wake up one morning going, I cannot wait to
I don't even want to be
file.
involved in this. I'll be honest with you. It was very hard for me to get the courage to speak up, especially as a business owner, and especially as these are people I've known for quite some time. But when I had conversations to make resolutions, there was no resolution that was, beneficial for both sides.
Well, and that's the thing. I think you are the embodiment of the solution, is that it takes regular people. In some cases, as you've said, it costs money, it costs time, it costs some of these personal relationships to say, listen, this is wrong, and I've got to address it. And I'm addressing not just because I'm personally affected, but because of how it affects so many other things. And I think, to your question, the solution is, if people are going to have the courage, which I think you've shown in this, and the tenacity to challenge it, then other people get behind it. Like, I wouldn't have personally gotten involved or even known about the issue until I sort of saw what was happening with other people who were going to the meetings and saying, hey, listen, not only is this ethically dubious, but it's legally, it's literally, it's illegal. They function best when there's a lack of transparency, when other people are maybe intimidated and in fear of speaking out, and when they see that there is a consensus to allow this to happen. I think, in our different ways, whether it's you, Holly, or Joe, or myself, or other people, the one thing that we all have in common is, we might have a lot to lose in some cases, but we're willing to stand on something because we think it's wrong. And we have to articulate not only the legal reasons, but the moral reasons why. Because, in the end, you're absolutely right. This is a really small community, and sometimes we do lose friends or associates over some of these decisions. But that doesn't make those decisions wrong. If somebody,
just part of the process.
Well, look, if somebody's willing to say to you, "I'm not going to be your friend anymore, Miss Worthington, because you're speaking out against this development project," first of all, I challenge what kind of friend they really were at first, and secondly, that doesn't make their argument correct.
Right.
Well, I can give you our word that we're going to continue to monitor this story, and we do hope to check back in with you in a few months just for updates from your perspective. But we've been covering the story for a few months, and we're going to continue.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure, and
yeah.
thanks for staying up. And I do want to mention one other thing. I mean, we had this whole segment. We didn't say affordable housing once. I think, and we should have, because this has nothing to do with affordable housing.
Market rate.
Yeah, attainable housing.
Attainable.
Yeah. So thank you, Holly. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching this edition of Open Agenda. We'll be back next week with another new episode.
Migraine, God help us.